This live stream is brought to you by Still and Evergreen Garden Care. Still is Australia's most trusted brand of garden power tools, backed by 95 years of German engineering excellence. To get your hands on their range, visit your local Still dealer today or visit still.com.au. Evergreen Garden Care and their market-leading brands are some of the best known and trusted consumer brands within the garden care market. To be inspired and easily create and maintain your garden, head to lovethegarden.com.
Garden Express are Australia's leading mail-order gardening service, offering a wide range of quality garden products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show you jump online and visit their website.
Right, here we go. Hello, welcome to the Garden Gurus Live. I'm Trevor Cochrane. It's great to be back with you this morning. A big thanks to Joe for looking after the chair in my absence the last couple of weeks. We've got lots of things going on here at Guru Productions. Obviously, the Garden Gurus is absolutely buzzing at the moment. We've been having some fantastic programs and lots of great content. We had Nigel Ruck in the studio this morning. He's out filming at the moment in and around. He's over here in the west this time around, but we film, of course, all over the country. Now, today is not really about the Garden Gurus TV show. This is about you and your gardens and what you would like to, I suppose, get advice on. That's the chance for you to actually write in, give us your questions. So really important. We do have a few special guests coming up. With winter just around the corner, I'm being joined by special guest Clayton Cowley from Sproutwell Greenhouses. You may have seen him on the show. They've got the most amazing greenhouse and glasshouse configurations, and I've actually got a couple of them at home. I use them to get a lot of my sensitive plants through the winter. Talk to Clayton about that. If you love native plants, you might have seen our little promo photo, but if you love native plants, well, now is the time to be doing a whole bunch of things to get really good results out of them. Talk to you about them and why they're so important this time of the year. If you're looking for ways to decorate your outdoor area, we've got David Van Berkel joining us a bit later on with a special offer coming from our friends at Garden Express. And as always, I'll be there answering your questions. I've got Plant of the Week, which I'll feature and answer all your questions. We've got prizes to be won. Don't forget, when you send in your question, put your state and your city in the question. It really helps me a lot because climatically, Australia is such a big place with such variation. It's really important we get it right. And of course, the last but most important thing is if you like what we're doing, hit the like button. It shares it with your friends and it means that more people can participate. Okay, shall we get into some questions first because we've got a lot of them coming through and we'll start in Central Victoria. Steve has written in, his apple tree is blossoming already, but it hasn't dropped its leaves yet. Should I remove the blossom? Look, Steve, just leave it. It shouldn't be blossoming at the moment, but what we find is when you get quite dramatic changes of temperature, sometimes these plants will flush, and usually it means that you've had a bit of a warm spell. So it will just mean that it'll hang on to its leaves longer. At the same time, it'll start thinking about trying to produce flowers, but it won't affect your crop in the next season. So of course, we've got to get through winter. The tree's got to rest. And it will produce flowers again a little bit further down the line in the springtime. And of course, you'll end up with fruit anywhere from sort of Christmas right through to this time of the year. We'll head back over here to WA. Danny's actually sent a photograph in. He's from Baldivis, a suburb on the outer reaches and southern side of the city, southeastern side of the city. I've got a problem with my lime tree. It does not have many leaves, and I hope you can give some advice on how to fix it. Now, I'm thinking we've got a picture that's going to go up somewhere here. Maybe there. I can see the picture, but I don't know if anybody. Oh, yes, you can. You can see it. Now, this is a classic example of Western Australia's terribly poor soils. So all citrus are what I like to call gross feeders. They actually like to be fed all the time, and your lime tree should be just full of foliage at the moment, and it's not, and it's showing signs of real stress. Now, this is just a lack of nutrients. Predominantly, trace elements are missing here. You can see it's a little bit on the yellow side. It's not happy. So I would be giving it a boost with trace elements at the moment and I would be giving it a good all-round citrus fertilizer. And there's a ripper from Osmocote that you can get that's specifically designed for citrus. Just as far as I said, they're gross feeders. You should be feeding them, even with a controlled release fertilizer, every 3 to 4 months regularly. It's really important to get that sort of establishment of the tree and the structure right. Really important. Okay, we are going to stay in WA for the moment. Jean is in Lansdowne. I wanted to use fallen dead tea tree branches to attach plants to. I've noticed on dead orange tree branches, I already have air plants. And what sort? Actually, I reckon Lansdowne's not the Lansdowne here. I think this might be in Victoria. And I've already got air plants there that's on there that's sawdust under it. Will the same thing happen with the tea tree paperbark branches? I want to put climbing plants onto them. Look, Jean, I use paperbark branches for epiphytic plants. So I put a lot of air plants, those Tillandsias that we know, or old man's whiskers sometimes they're called. A lot of bromeliads, so they love going into that sort of environment. And because of the paperbark, it holds moisture in there. They take the nutrient out of that slow decaying wood, and they tend to get bigger and stronger and better. And you can stick things like ferns there as well. Staghorns and elkhorns are really good as well. So yeah, use them. It's a great idea, and it's a lot better than necessarily shredding them and turning them into mulch, or alternatively sending them off to the tip. Now let's stay in Victoria. I think Tyson is a good friend of ours. He joins us just about every single week in Baronia. Tyson, can I plant bok choy seeds in my garden bed? Can you please give me some tips and advice? So bok choy loves being in full sun, Tyson. If you can plant the seeds into sand, so even if you've got a heavy soil, you can get some nice clean sand and lay little channels, if you like, and then in those channels of sand, plant your bok choy seeds. You'll get the very best results. They do love germinating in a sandy soil first. So spread them out along the line, full sun, give them a water, keep your water up, make sure that they're getting watered every 2 or 3 days, and that should be all you need to do. And they're very quick, Tyson, so within 6 weeks you should be harvesting, which will be really good news. Okay, first question out of New South Wales, and it comes from Karen in Coffs Harbour. I'm looking for companion plants to go with peppermint herb. Okay, so I'm assuming the peppermint being the mint, and you're looking for companion plants to go with them. Believe it or not, companion plants that work really well with mint include, and I have them in my own garden, citrus. So if you're looking for dwarf citrus and put the mint in around the base, absolutely fantastic. If you're looking for something a little more compact, blueberries go really, really well if you're keeping that edible plant theme. But look, you can do all sorts of things, to be quite honest. And the only downside to peppermint is that every once in a while, you'll have to go through and pull it out a little bit and cut it back and just keep it fresh. It is hungry. It does like to be fed on a regular basis. And that's about all I can give you, Karen. It's pretty straightforward. There's quite a few plants. There's really nothing that's not going to do pretty well around the two. Alida, I'm not sure where you are from, but you sent us an email. There's a picture attached. Thank you for the inspiring program. It's such a great help to us. We have a lemon tree. We've been watering and feeding it. The leaves have curled, and the new ones have a light colour. What do we need to do? Now, we're going to see these problems all the time with citrus. This time of the year, as the weather cools down, it starts to become obvious that we have got some mineral deficiencies. And that's what's going on here. That deficiency with a curly leaf is actually a really unusual one. So it's manganese is something that you need to be adding into it. The lighter green, you can see the dark veins in that. That's iron. So you've got a combination of two things going on here at the same time. And what it says is that you should be applying trace elements. So you can buy trace element mixtures and literally put them around the base of the tree, and it should be usually on the drip line. So that's the outside edge of the branches where the foliage sits and the water drips down. Put it in around there. That's where all those feeder roots sit. On the ground, water it in. It usually comes like a dusty rock powder. Spread that around the outside, wash it right in. You are probably going to need to do it again in about 3 to 6 months' time, and you should start to see the balance occur again in the soil. And look, just one little point with this, and that is citrus do require a good all-round fertilizer. So when you're buying fertilizers and you've got citrus trees, only buy a fertilizer that's designed for citrus, because a lot of them lack some of those trace elements which I think is why you're getting the results you're getting at the moment. Alida, thank you so much for sending the photo in. It's a good point though. You can send pictures to us, so yeah, it's a good way for us to help identify what the problems are. Greg is in Parkerville, that's over here in the west, just seeing when I should spray my stone fruit, peaches, plums, nectarines with mancozeb, pre-leaf drop or after. Thanks, team. Okay, Greg, always spray your trees after they've dropped their leaves. Now, the important message here actually is probably not so much the mancozeb. Mancozeb will clean off a few fungal problems, but not necessarily take control of all the big problems. You're a lot better to use, in the old days, they used to use a combination of copper and got to think of the other ingredient. It'll come to me. Sorry, a blank moment. But what it is the one to use is actually something called copper oxychloride or Cuprex or Cuprox. It's a mixture of a type of copper. It's not a copper sulfate, but it's a copper that's really effective in cleaning off diseases, and that's actually what most of those stone fruit will suffer from. So diseases and funguses, and that'll clean them up. So copper oxychloride. If you're going to buy, you can buy one called Coside, and that's probably what the professionals tend to use these days. So look for those. That should help, but definitely spray after it's dropped its leaves. And to be honest, you can let them rest through the winter. It's not going to make an awful lot of difference. Spray them just before they start pushing out their new growth. So you should see the buds start to swell. Spray them then, Greg. That'll help. Took me a while to get through that, but hopefully that makes sense. Tony is in Yarra Valley in Victoria, beautiful part of the world. We've got a team over there filming a food show right at the moment. It's a great part of the planet. Question is, I have 2 teddy bear magnolias that are going brown at the ends of the leaves, and some are completely falling off. What do I do to bring them back up to a healthy condition? Now, typically, I've got teddy bears in my own garden, Tony, and I've seen this sort of problem before, but usually that's occurring when you are seeing drying. So it's some kind of dry stress generally around the root system. So it's very unusual to see that. Now, what I would recommend you do is that you give the ground around the base of these trees an absolute drenching with sea salt. Now, seaweed extract is really good for stimulating root activity, and when you're seeing dry stress, you're seeing the damage of roots that have gone and dried out that are really stressed. So, yeah, my suggestion is at this moment in time, soak the ground. And if you're finding the ground's dry, could be that it's become hydrophobic, apply a wetting agent. And you can get that sea salt with a wetting agent in it. So that might help as well. But it is concerning because this is one very hardy tree, and most of the teddy bear magnolias that found around Australia originated from Victoria. So that's where they were introduced first. Chris is in WA. Hi, Chris. You're looking for some help choosing a couple of indoor plants. You've got a shop. You've got pretty poor sunlight, direct sunlight, and they're only really the shop LEDs. Now, this is a really good question. So it depends on how tall you're looking for, and you're looking for some nice big broadleaf varieties. So things like ficus, there's a whole range of different ficus that you can get, but the 2 most common ones are probably Elastica, which is the classic old rubber tree, almost indestructible, does really well in a dark sort of spot and will continue to grow. And the one that's become unbelievably popular is the fiddle leaf. Okay, so that's a really good one to have, and both of them are great. If you're looking for something a little more compact, I reckon it's pretty hard to go past in a really dark spot. For a mid-sized plant, and you're probably talking a metre or so in a 300 ml pot, something like Monstera deliciosa, that is an absolutely brilliant indoor plant. And if you're looking for something that's small, that doesn't get very big at all, remember these guys here. So this is the ZZ plant. Actually, you can just see we've got some new foliage starting to emerge here, and it's beautiful lime green. So if you can see that foliage, and it's this lovely lime green colour, and then when it matures, it turns black. This is a specific variety, okay? It's called Raven, and yeah, it's an amazing plant. The thing with the ZZ plant, it is probably the most indestructible plant of all. It really is almost impossible to kill, and it doesn't like being overwatered, doesn't mind being underwatered. It can be in the darkest spot, so that's a great one. If you're looking for some maybe nice pots to put on counters, on either side. I know your store. We went and came and filmed with you recently, Maddington Mowers and Saws, and it's a still dealership with some really fantastic service. So thanks for joining us, Chris. Rena is in Sydney. Hello. Received a pot of hyacinth hybrid flowers. Can I plant them in the garden now? And when the flowers die, can I leave the bulbs in the garden to flower next year? The answer is, Rena, you can. The question will be whether you get cold enough for those bulbs to trigger new flowering. Now, in cool climates, they will bounce back. So my answer to you is that I would put them into the garden regardless, because what do you lose if they don't actually produce flower or continue to grow? Nothing at all. But hyacinths, we're really in that season now where you can get the hyacinth bulbs, put them into the jars and flower them. And some people are getting them in pots, particularly in and around Mother's Day. Beautiful, fragrant bulb, typically spring flowering. But yeah, I would put them into the ground. You can't go wrong. Deborah is in Cootamundra. Now, Deborah, thanks so much for joining us. We purchased 2 little gem magnolias. We've got a bit of a magnolia run today. A couple of years ago, and we planted both at the same time, one on each side of our front yard. One's grown beautifully. The other is still alive, still looks healthy, but it's only half the height and nowhere near as thick and plump. It's still flowering, but again, it's not as prolific as the other. Can I give you some idea how to enhance a smaller one? Well, here's the thing with magnolias. Those evergreen magnolias love being fed. So what I would do is I would balance it out by not feeding the one that's growing really well and regularly feeding the one that is a little bit behind. And do you know what the difference between the two probably is? More than likely, the only real difference will be the quality of the soil. So it just meant when one went into the ground in one spot of the garden, there's probably some poor quality soil there and it just hasn't got traction. But if you keep feeding it, providing fertilizer on a regular basis, and I mean probably every 6 weeks, what you'll do is you'll really stimulate some strong growth, and that'll get the root system down and it'll eventually find its way and it'll take off. How good's that? All right, well, we've had a bit of a run straight away, haven't we, of questions, and there's a lot more coming through. We're seeing them start to flow really strongly through from New South Wales. But before we get into that, I think we might have a chat to my mate, Clayton Cowley. Now, Sproutwell Greenhouses are a big part of any good garden where you've got sort of, particularly cold sensitive plants, or if you like to grow those warm tropical plants, it creates the perfect environment, a glass house or a greenhouse. Nobody knows them better than Clayton. Clay, good morning to you.
G'day, Trevor. How you going?
All right. Now, I'm not hearing sound from you just at the moment, mate. Have you clicked your sound on? How are we going? Okay.
Sound should be on. Can you hear me?
No, we're not hearing Clay. Can you hear Clay? You can hear him. Okay, is that something that we are doing here? I'm sorry, we're just going to fix this little USB codec. We were working before. I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay, I'm just going to try this and see how we go. And fix it, Clay. If not, we might ask you to.
I can hear you.
With one more link. How are you going there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think we might need to restart again. Okay, well, we're going to get you to turn off and come back in, Clay, and I'll move on with a couple of questions whilst we sort out our little technical issue here. Now, let me fly into those questions because Laura from Macville in New South Wales I'd like to know actually what the best fertilizer is for gardenias that have magnesium deficiency. All right, so they're just like citrus gardenias. They love a really complex fertilizer, and that's the key. You said you've got wonderful big little gem magnolias. They've got lots of yellow leaves and brown spots. How do you treat it? Again, this is food. Right now, plants actually need that. This is one big window of opportunity to give them a good feed as you go into the winter months, and you should find that things are looking pretty good come springtime. But give them a really good feed. All of them, the gardenias, you can get specific gardenia, magnolia, rose fertilizers. These promote flower and lovely deep green growth, but most importantly, they've got complex micronutrients. So you've got magnesium, manganese, iron, all of those really important micronutrients are in those specialized blends, which is why you should look out for those. Hopefully that helps Laura. All right, let's see if we've got Clay back. Clay. No, I'm still having a
Still no
technical.
good.
I'm not sure what's going on here. That's strange. We were chatting with him earlier on, but it's and I've definitely got sound working here. So we'll have to work on that and come back to you in a moment, Clay. Try and work out what it is that we are doing wrong. Maybe we. Oh, Clay. No. No, still not hearing you. All right, well, we'll keep working on that. Susie, I'm not sure where you're from. This is why it's so important to tell us where you are from. It does help enormously, albeit I think I can help you with this one. I've got a problem area that doesn't grow anything well. Now, the plants are very stunted. The area is around the cocos palms. So there's lots of roots and you're renting, so you don't want to spend big dollars, but you want it to look nice. Now, cocos palms do have really vigorous roots and they will suck up all the goodness out of the soil and around the base of them. So pretty much the only way to sort of fix that is to have very low growing ground covers around the base of them. A lot of people do things like ivies and stuff like that to just give it a nice green effect. So putting a bit of a layer of soil over the top, planting in some ground covers over the top, they will spread around and they will green the area up. But you're not going to find shrubs doing too well when they're competing with cocos palm roots. This is quite a common problem that a lot of people experience. So it's really interesting. Now, Graham, we'll keep moving along. Susie, I'm not sure where you were from, but please, folks, make sure you tell us where you're from. They are coming through, but I'm seeing the odd one where we don't have a suburb or town. So Graham has asked this question. He's from Melbourne. Can I transplant a Chameleon now or should I wait? Now, the plant is still young. It's about 1 metre high. Many thanks. It'll depend on how established that plant is and how much of a root system it's got. Graham, basically, as soon as we get the winter weather come through and the soil's quite moist, that's when you can sort of move your Chameleon. And you want to try and keep as much of the root system with it as you can. One of the tricks is to cut a bit of a 180-degree arc around the outside into the soil, about that deep, cutting the roots, and then give it a soaking with sea salt. Then about 2 weeks later, go and do the other side and again soak it with sea salt, and you should be able to actually ease the whole plant out and move it into its new home. Camellias do take a bit of time sometimes to recover from transplant, but they will transplant is the message there. And sea salt, because of that seaweed extract, that King Island bull kelp that's in there, it seems to do these magical things with roots and make sure that they are they're not a problem. So yeah, hopefully you can get through that, and sort of the winter is the best time. You will affect the flowers, so if it's got any flower buds on it, it's going to drop those flowers. Just be aware of that. Now let's head north. We're going up into Queensland. We're on the Gold Coast. Glen, good morning, Trevor and gang. I went shopping for Power Feed with Treforte AM and got quite confused as to which one to buy. Can you please give me some suggestions? Right. So Power Feed is made by the same people who make sea salt, and it uses a few other ingredients in there. So it's got nutrients in it. It uses fish emulsion, and it uses some seaweed extract in there. It's a really good fertilizer, and that's the liquid form. And then they created a granulated form, and the granulated form, they went to the people who make Treforte and they said, we want to use this technology that you guys have got, and that's the microbial technology. So they've developed that, and that's what you're seeing in your local Bunnings store, because that's where Power Feed with Treforte technology is available. Great product, does a really good job. It does put microbes into the soil, and it just depends what sort of plants that you are wanting to feed. So that's really the key. And they've all got their names on the label. So I hope that helps. It's probably not a huge help, but it might explain what the difference is between the two. Of course, Treforte AM is another product. It's found in independent garden centres, and it has a complex. It's about 60 macronutrients and controlled release fertilizers. It's a different product altogether, really. Okay, let's go. We'll come down from Queensland. We'll come back to Perth for a second. Michelle's in Perth. Can I look after my aloe plants? How can I look after my aloe plant here in Perth? It's currently on the balcony. Aloes do really well in pots. They really do love being in a pot. And it's surprisingly, you think that aloes actually grow in sandy, barren soil, but they don't. They love a really good, rich potting mix. So the real key here is to make sure that you actually have your potting mix, is a really good potting mix when you plant them up. And what will happen is it'll just get bushier and bushier and fill the pot out. So that's all you've got to really worry about. Okay, let's keep rolling along, and we'll go to Barnsdale in Victoria. Sharon, you've said, I'd like to know, can I grow Little Prince and Leucospermum in a pot? Thanks. Little Prince, I'm not 100% sure. I suspect I know Leucospermums are obviously proteas. The answer is they do really well in pots, but you do need a specialised potting mix. So you want one with native, ideally for native plants, okay? So they're a little bit sensitive to the phosphorus build-up in soils. So fertilisers have got to be the right kind of fertilisers, and the potting mix has got to be the right sort of potting mix. But yes, they look great in pots. All right. Well, we haven't solved our problem, I don't think, as of yet with clay. I can see him there, but yep, we have. Are we hearing clay? Okay. All right. What we're going to do is we're just going to go to our still video segment of the week. We popped out to Still Osborne Park, and one of the most common problems that we have is having line on your line trimmer literally breaking off and then needing to be restrung. But Still fix that. And I went into the store and asked them, what the technology is that they're using to make it so much easier. And here was the answer. Now, this has to be one of the most commonly asked questions we get. It's the one when you've got the line trimmer, you've spooled it for the first time, you've run out of line, how do you refill it? Brett's going to give me a hand. We're here at the local Still dealer. And what's the trick, mate?
All right, Trevor. The first thing that we need to do is work out which cord will suit your machine. So with the Still range of cord, they're all color-coded to make it nice and simple.
It used to be a lot of mucking around and quite difficult to do. You don't have to take the head off the shaft anymore, do you?
No, with our new head, all you have to do is line up the arrows.
Oh, so it's that arrow pointing to the arrow above there, so that's your line.
That's it. So once you've got them in line, we then take one end, we push it through. We then pull it through. That will then leave us with two separate pieces.
Approximately the same length.
Approximately the same length on the outer.
Yep.
Once we've got that all the way through like that, we are then following this other arrow. We hold the outer and we wind it. It's as simple as that.
There's no taking the head off, there's no unscrewing the end, there's no having to wrap it around the right way. This is dead easy.
It is as easy as you could possibly get. And the best thing, because it's winding itself on, once you go to reuse it and you bump that on the ground, it will throw itself out.
That's the reason why you head into your local Still dealer. Still is perfectly designed for people at home to use tools. Now, don't you love technology? When it works, it's fantastic, and when it doesn't, it's a nightmare. But thankfully, we've worked out what the problem is. And Clayton Cowley is joining us. Clayton, how are you, mate? Good morning. Sorry for all the technical issues.
Very good. Very good today. So I guess I sound better than when I'm muted. So that's one good step.
You weren't muted. It was some technical issue we had at this end, but we fixed it, mate. So, Clay, let's talk about Sproutwell Greenhouses just for a minute and tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, we've been going since about 2011. Been a steady progression from a business point of view. Started out quite small and just developed over the years, sort of introduced a lot of new products and, different ranges that, are a little bit more versatile. And we've seen a huge growth in probably the last 3 years, particularly, just in the uptake of greenhouses and people wanting to, have a bit more security around their own food and just be involved in that growing phase. So for us, it's it's been quite good through COVID. We've been, fortunate from a business point of view that things have been relatively stable. It comes with, general supply problems like the whole world's experiencing at the moment, but it's
Yeah.
just managing those things as best you can and trying to keep, customers informed as best you can and manage their expectations, because at the end of the day, we are all waiting longer for things than what we're used to.
Clay, it's also important to mention that you're a family business.
Correct. Yeah, it's family business. So myself and my wife started the business, back in 2011, and we've got a few other family members that work for us, and we've got about 12 staff. So it's a good little number. We're a nice tight knit team, and we all enjoy what we do.
Tell me about the greenhouses themselves. So you've got greenhouses and glass houses. People buy them in kit form. They're delivered out to wherever you live. Is that how it works?
Correct. So we deliver Australia-wide. We do have an assembly service, which is more of a local service we provide in and around the Geelong and Melbourne area here in Victoria. But from a hobby point of view, most people will put them up themselves or use a handyman. As you said, we can deliver them to your door. We've got greenhouses that start at a little seed raising kit right up to something that might be 7 meters wide by 30 meters long. So we're providing more and more to schools and educational institutions, which is nice to see. And we do offer schools a specific discount to put a greenhouse into their space.
Well, it's a perfect way to grow, particularly those sensitive plants, so seedlings and so on. It's fantastic. But mate, on the weekend, I happen to be in my local little town, Kalamunda, and a lady came up to me on the street and said, "Oh, listen, I was going to enter the competition to win a Sproutwell greenhouse, but I actually bought one a couple of years ago, and I've had it." And she said, "This year I grew ginger, turmeric, and galangal," and she said, "I grew so much of it." At the rate, I think they're about $40 a kilo or something. She said, "I grew so much of it that I've actually been in a situation where I have got myself enough money from selling the ginger to pay off the cost of the greenhouse." How amazing is that?
Yeah, it is pretty cool. And even in the cool climate here, we grow ginger and turmeric, and we've got a self-watering pot that we grow. And I think last year we harvested about 4.5 kilos of ginger out of this one, 40-litre pot. So it's amazing what you can do when you're giving your plants that environment that they need.
Absolutely. And look, just talking about those pots, I'm sure you don't have one handy, but certainly being out there in Geelong and having a look at your display and seeing the new pots that you designed, they are fantastic. They are the best self-watering pots I've seen. They've got a wicking device in them. The design is far more superior than anything I've seen out there at the moment in the marketplace. They're a really good idea. People can buy those off you as well, right?
Yeah, they can jump on the website and buy those. They're called the Sprout Pot. And what we wanted to do was create a pot that had a self-watering but also self-filling ability to it. And the water reservoir and the growing medium is separated, so it makes it easier to move the pot around. They're not so heavy like some other pots can be. So they're a really great unit, and you have great growing success because you've always got water there for your plants, so they're not waiting on you to water them.
Yeah, no, it's actually really, really, really impressive design. I love them. I thought they were fantastic. Now, mate, we've got this great competition. Now, it's we're going to put in a couple of $1,000s worth of garden goodies that it's going to come with the greenhouse for the winner. But tell us a little bit about the options that they might have when it comes to greenhouses or glass houses.
Yeah, well, I guess with that competition, we've kind of put a value on it that it allows people to be a bit more, I guess, choice preferential. So it's not like they have to zone in and pick a particular product. So whether they want, a glass house, we do shade houses as well for, those really warm climates where you might want, a lot more cooling. There's, our orangery style, which is more of our outdoor room greenhouses, or you could go for our Grange, which is probably one of the most popular greenhouses that is around, and that goes in a 3, 4, 5 or 7 meter wide scenario, which can be extended up to 20 meters long. So something around $8,000 is going to get you, a really nice, decent size, either glass house or a really good greenhouse of around, that 4 by 6 or 8 meters long. So you're talking up to 30 square meters of space.
You're growing a lot of stuff in that sort of space, mate. I wanted to ask you, because look, there'll be a lot of people look at this and go, "Great, I love the idea of having one, but I'm not
Yep.
sure how to put it all together." Now, you provide comprehensive plans, obviously, to be able to install it, and if people need permission from council, it helps them with council as well. But also, most importantly, you back it up with after-sales service, don't you?
Yeah, correct. Like, we've got all the really detailed instruction manuals. We've got videos that once you make the purchase, we send you out a link. You can view the video, watch that step by step. We've also got guys in the office that, if you're having any trouble, shoot us an email, give us a call, and we can talk you through it. We even sometimes FaceTime some of our customers because, it just helps them through a patch that they might be struggling with one part of it. And just get them back on the right track and keep going.
How long does it take typically to put up say a medium-sized grange?
Yeah, so say if you had a 3 metre wide by 4 metre long, we'd say, you've never done one before, allow yourself, a couple of people, 1 to 2 days, depending on, your ability level. But, for our guys that have installed them, we do one of them in about 4 or 5 hours, but it's one of those things that you just want to allow a good day or two. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic, mate. Look, this is a great prize. You're a great bloke, and great family company. You guys doing some really good work that's helping home gardeners be able to bring these protected growing environments in. Really, really good work, mate. Thanks so much for joining us.
No, I appreciate it.
In a couple of weeks' time, we'll be announcing our winner, which I'm pretty excited about. I know there's a lot of people who are tuning in, asking questions. When's it going to be announced? When's it going to be announced? Yeah. It's coming up. Stay tuned, because
it's going to be great. And we'll be able to help them through the whole process and consult with them so that they get the right product, whoever does win. So,
well done. All right, mate. Well, look, thanks very much.
No worries at all.
Catch up with you, buddy, and we'll look forward to seeing you again real soon.
No worries. Thanks, Trevor.
See you, Clay.
Bye.
Now, this really is a wonderful family company. Clay and the family have been doing this great work. I've got a grange, and I've got a beautiful orangery glass house at home that I've put in. We're growing all sorts of climate sensitive things. So my environment gets pretty cool during the winter time. And it means that there's a lot of tropical plants that I like growing that really probably shouldn't naturally grow in my environment. But if I move them into the glass house during the winter, they get through, they produce crops, they look fantastic, and they don't set back. So it's kind of cheating, I know, but hey, listen, that's what us gardeners do, isn't it? We try and grow so many different beautiful things, some of them not necessarily ideal for our environment. All right, now I do want to talk to you about native plants, and the reason why I chose Grevillea as one of the feature plants to show you was because at the moment, grevilleas are really important in my garden, and they're important for a very specific reason. Pretty much everything has just about stopped flowering now. We're right at the end of the flowering process. The weather's cooled down. Some plants are going to dormancy, and in about 2 months' time, all the bush plants, all the native plants will be in flower and progressively flower as we move into the spring. But there's this little lapse in time, this little moment in time where there's not a lot of these plants flowering. Now, grevilleas do flower all year round, and this time of the year they tend to be flushing lots of flower. And it's important because I want my bees to be able to get some pollen, to be able to come and get the nectar out of these flowers and take it back to the hive and use it. And that means that I've got to make sure I've got a reasonably healthy plants, but also a reasonable number of them. Now, just to put this into context, if you want to grow natives, now's actually a really good time of the year to, one, be planting them, and two, to be feeding them. And there's a couple of products that I wanted to mention that'll help you get through and avoid the pitfalls that a lot of people have with Aussie native plants. So many Australian natives, predominantly what we call proteaceous plants, so the banksias, even things like bottlebrush and grevillea, can be quite sensitive to high levels of phosphorus. And there's also those South African plants too, the pin cushions, the leptospermums and leucodendrons. You've got the comb bushes and, of course, proteas. And you should not forget also our own Australian waratahs as well, out of New South Wales. They do not like, any of them, high levels of phosphorus. So that's why people at Osmocote developed a special phosphorus sensitive fertilizer designed to get the best results out of these plants. Now, not only is it now the time to be giving these guys a good feed, but if you want to grow some, you can grow them in pots as well. And the guys at Osmocote have developed, guys and girls, sorry, have developed a Osmocote for native plants. It's a potting mix that will really give you great growth results. Now, these fertilizers are actually incorporated within the potting mix. It's just one of the superior, I suppose, quality that professional growers rely on and home gardeners can now get their hands on. It's such a great product. You can't go wrong because it's controlled release. It'll feed for 6 months, and now's the time to be applying the fertilizer and to be potting up into the potting mix. And just we had a question earlier on about proteas. Well, proteas, yes, absolutely. They definitely need that special potting mix. So keep your eye out for it. Couple little tips about this. The little prills that are in Osmocote, and you can see, I'm going to show that to you. You can see the prills. You'll know it because you'll see it in the pots in the soil of the pots of the plants that you buy when you go to the nursery. That prill technology is incredible. It's driven by temperature. So it's what they call an osmotic or osmosis action, where when it's cold, it releases small amounts, but when it's warm, the prills will release more, and that really ties into the plant's growing pattern. So that's why it's so important. Now, there's added wetting agents in here. We're moving around a lot. There's adding wetting agents in here. There's boosted trace element levels. It really is just amazing technology. So this and the potting mix, if you want to grow natives, and you should be growing some natives, and you can do it in pots if you don't have a big area, now's the time to do something about it. And your bees will love you because there's not a lot of options. But when you look at the amount of flower on those, that little bunch of flowers that I've just picked, it's quite incredible how prolific they are and how much goodness they can get from these flowers. And these flowers have got a really sweet smell, and that's exactly what the bees need to feed them. So Osmocote potting mix for natives, and also, of course, the fertilizer. Get into them and it'll do them the world of good. All right, I know what you're saying. You've got questions. You want to hear more of the answers, don't you? Okay, well, there are a lot of questions flowing through, and some of them are from our regulars and some are for some new names that I'm not quite familiar with. For example, Louise has joined us. Now, you didn't tell us where you're from, Louise, but I'll do my best to help you. You said you've got an area in your garden that receives late westerly sun. It's mostly shade until 4 p.m. Oh, you're from Sydney. Sorry, yeah, I see it. Are there any suggestions, please? I love the show. Thank you so much, one, for your support of the Garden Gurus. You've got no idea how much we all appreciate all of you supporting us, and we do our best to return that by giving you as much great gardening advice and inspiration as we can. Now, a position that receives late westerly sun basically means that you can grow a lot of those exotics. So you're in Sydney, so it's subtropical. It can get a bit cool during the winter, but to be quite honest, you can grow things that I wish I could grow outside. Things like crotons. Crotons are beautiful colourful foliage plants. You could be putting in all the bromeliads. There's some beautiful broms that colour up spectacularly, and you could use them all around the base in a rock garden, for example, with some crotons and some of those colourful tropical foliage plants, even things like the coleus, which, there are some beautiful perennial forms of coleus that would add lots and lots of colour. So it's not a bad spot. It's what you're really talking about here is just growing shade plants. And you can get all sorts of colour, as I said. Things like azaleas are another opportunity. If you want to think about something that's a bit different, those cooler climate plants, but will do well in this environment, azaleas and camellias will do incredibly well. So there's a few suggestions, Louise. Thanks very much for your contribution and your kind words. It's very much appreciated. Cheryl is joining us via YouTube as well, and she's from WA. Hello. I'm glad you're glad you made the live chat. Well, we're glad you made it too. My question is, I've discovered mole crickets in my raised garden bed. They seem to be eating my potatoes, and they possibly could be. And the thing about mole crickets is that if you can kind of get them to move off the property or move them away by using a couple of things. One of them is making sure that the bed is nice and moist. They tend to get into drier soils, and they can do a fair bit of damage to some of those spuds. They'll eat little chunks out of them. So you could treat it that way. There are some chemicals, but look, you're growing edibles, so I'd much prefer you not to use chemicals when it comes to trying to treat this. So maybe just do that. The other thing is you can dig around a little bit and remove them manually. There's never going to be that many that you couldn't get a little bit better control by manual removal. Okay, we're going to go to Sam in South Australia. I bought 6 Chinese pistachios last year, bare-rooted, but they don't seem to be growing. What do I need to get them moving? Well, Sam, the Chinese pistachios are a deciduous tree, so you're going to find that they're going to go dormant pretty soon. You should be seeing a bit of colour coming on the foliage. But the trick will be in the springtime, when you see the first buds start to move, is to feed them. So they really do need to be fed, and you need to make sure that moisture is getting down evenly into the soil and in and around the roots. So that's where a wetting agent probably would be a good idea to apply. But don't even worry about it until October. So at the moment, let them rest during the winter. They will establish naturally and slowly get themselves going. But it's always the first year after a bare-rooted tree has been planted that the tree's putting all the effort into developing that new root system. You usually see the second year, you'll start to get some pretty good growth. So make sure they're getting water, make sure that they're getting some nutrient in the springtime, and you should be fine, particularly in SA. And what a beautiful tree, Chinese pistachios, one of my favourite autumn trees. All right, are you looking for some new ways to decorate your outdoor area? Well, I know a guy who can help you because he's constantly thinking about stuff like this. And when we talk about decorating, we're talking about maybe bringing some formality in. David Van Berkel, good morning to you.
Trevor, good morning to you.
Now,
you're crazy plant guy, always thinking of different things.
Yeah, well, I've been called crazy more than once, my friend, and it may well be deserved, but we'll talk about hedging plants at the moment. Outdoor areas like decorating, bringing formality in. You got that Garden Express poster, with it's actually behind you right there. Yeah, great example of how you can bring wonderful formality into a garden using hedging plants. And you guys have come up with a way to help people get themselves started, right?
Yes, absolutely, Trev. We've got our 15 packs of the hedging range of plants from Buxus, Photinias, some silver sheens, and depending on which ones you get more and more meters of hedging for each of these packs at 50% off this week, Trev.
50% off an amazing deal. Now, I saw them at Ficus. I saw them. They got those blister packs. They're wonderful little starter plants, and you had all those things. You had some things like the Japanese sacred bamboo as well. And what I was interested in is some of it can be formal hedges, but some of them can be informal, like the Japanese sacred bamboo, Nandina domestica. It's a really wonderful sort of small compact plant that doesn't necessarily need to be hedged if you've got the Nana form.
No, not at all. You can mix it up, get a little bit twisty in what you're doing. Line a fence, place between some roses, all of those different options. So beautiful little compact plants, I suppose. All of those hedging varieties. If you did line them up in a row, would get you a variety of sizes on the type of border that you might want to do. So we tend to use that word as well, border and hedging, because not all of them are going to grow the height of your timber fence kind of thing.
Yeah, typically, depending on, I suppose, the variety, 15 plants is probably going to give you somewhere between 5 and 10 metres, depending on, what the type of plant is. That's a significant area to cover, isn't it?
It certainly is. Like, your average patio might be 4 to 6 metres long, so you could, very nicely do the edge of a new patio, or down a driveway. And
Mm-hmm.
10 metres is quite a bit, particularly something like, phitinias where you would want to give them a lot of space.
Yeah.
But, general rule of thumb, 3 to 4 plants per metre. If you want that hedge quicker and thicker, you might plant them a little bit closer. But otherwise, you can spread them out, and eventually they'll touch together after a couple of years.
Yeah, look, it's actually better, folks, just as a little tip, it's actually better to give them a bit of room, a little bit of width. That will often fall into that trap of packing them a little bit too closely together. And then later on, when the hedge is just seeming like it's really going well, you'll see the odd plant will die out and it has to refill that gap. And that's just saying that they were just a bit too competitive with each other. So my philosophy is always about 300 to 400 mil between plants, depending on the variety. David, I wanted to talk to you about box, because a lot of people get those Bucks' hedge. The English box is the one that they think of. Works really, really well in Tassie and Melbourne. But in drier climates, you can still have a box, but you're probably best not to go for the English. You want to use something a bit different, and you've got those options as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the English and even the Dutch, the Dutch is a more compact hedge, really dwarf growing in its nature, but again, probably a cooler climate. Whereas we've got the Korean box, which is really good up into those warmer climates as well, and Japanese box for that really compact, full leaf structured plant as well.
Yeah, and they're both very, very good in drier climates. So I know it's the Korean and the Japanese box that we would be using in Perth and in Adelaide, the same thing. But certainly you've got the options here, and that's probably the key point. Mate, I wanted to ask, we should just run through the deal for this first, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about a couple of other things you might have at the moment. You got so let me just run through this so we get this right. You got 15 plants. That's 50 mil pots. You've taken 50% off the recommended retail. So that means that for Garden Guru viewers, they can get 6 to 8 meters of hedge for what?
$40. Simply $40. I know I always glare at Rowan when we say these things, but the 50 mil is that's our entry level range. Nice small product, ready and raring to go to create a beautiful hedge. Best not done in the middle of summer. So autumn, winter, spring planting is also very good. So it's a good time of year for us to move a heap of plants to gardeners to get that formality sorted in their garden.
David, we've got questions flown in from Port Stephens in New South Wales. Nicole's asked a question, and it's a really interesting little question she's got here. They've got a little convict-built church, and they'd love to put a hedge around the outside. They were looking at camellias, and she said that there's one already there that's shade protected by the church and thriving. Roses thrive there. She said it'll be full sun, sometimes wind, which is they're not too far from salty water. And she said they seem to be drawn to the white double formal. The taller, the better. What would you recommend for that sort of environment?
Swinging at me is Westringia. Just would make that beautiful, slightly taller hedge, to about a metre. A little bit of colour with the flowers in spring and summer. Bit of a coastal feel to it as well. That's probably one if you're looking for that height. I was going to go straight for Unimus as a nice dwarf compact thing, but Westringia really jumps out and grabs me for that purpose, Trev.
And probably you're right. The point that is really important there is that they're not far from salty water. Westringia is a coastal plant. It does exceptionally well in those sorts of environments without any problem at all. Good question.
Exactly. You've got the greyness of it also to set off, the building. So and then that little bit of fragrance as well. It just comes with everything, that one.
Yeah, good. It's a really good question, Nicole. Thank you. Now, David, we know the deal with the hedging plants, and I know there's a huge range. People need to jump online to your website and check out the different types, because that's the best way to do it. And of course, take up this very special offer. But I was chatting to Rowan earlier on. I just asked him whether you might have some spring flowering bulbs left, and he mentioned that you guys are doing something pretty special with them.
Yeah, I wondered if I'd get in trouble from you, Trevor, not bringing this one up earlier. But it is a last minute thing where we put together all the packs of the leftover from the season. It's a wide variety of things. You know, we might have 20 of this red tulip and 15 of Camargue and some daffodils. So we create our mystery box. We just put it together on Thursday, and I think he's nearly sold them all. But we reckon we'll come up with about 100, 150 more that's still online for sale.
So it's just a mixture of different varieties.
Yeah, we put about $130 worth of value. We throw a pair of garden gloves in there, the Gardener's Advantage garden gloves, 70% off, $39.
That's an amazing deal. And sorry, so just to qualify, people can take that offer up right now by going to your website, gardenexpress.com.au.
100%, and there's a banner up there with the mystery box bulbs. It's your last chance for the season to get some spring bulbs for your garden to tuck in behind that new little hedge that you're going to put up. Probably perfect.
Now, David, look, I don't want to be rude, mate, but could you nick off, because I need to get online and place an order before they're all sold.
Done, mate. I'm gone.
Thanks so much, mate. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for your support. It's fantastic, folks. Don't miss out on that. We know that these things sell out really, really quickly. All right. I think we're going to keep flying because we're running out of time. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left and so many questions, and I don't want to disappoint anybody. Sandra is in central Queensland. Is it too late to pull all Hippeastrum bulbs from their beds? I had an accident with a lawnmower man, spilt Roundup everywhere. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. My beloved 28-year plus daylilies were poisoned and some Hippeastrums. I need to revitalise the soil. So if I pull them out, what can I do to care for the bulbs? Well, the bulbs should still be growing at the moment, Sandra. So I would wait until you see the foliage yellow and they start to sort of go dormant. What a disaster! That's every gardener's nightmare, and one of the reasons why you have to be so careful with how you use herbicides in the garden. That's a real worry. So I'd wait until they die back, and then I would lift them, and then I would be looking at getting lots of organic material into the soil. I'd be using one of those fertilizers with the microbes in it, because those microbes also break down chemicals and turn them into organic compounds that are not poisonous. Boy, oh boy, that's a real problem. Samantha is in Mount Gambier in South Australia. Can I transplant my rose now as it's quite cold? Well, if your rose has gone dormant, if it's dropping its foliage, the answer is yes, you can. In fact, South Australia is the capital of rose growers in Australia, and most of those rose growers will be either digging or getting ready to start digging the bare-rooted roses, which you'll often see in the mass merchants, the big hardware stores, and people like Kmart, etc., where they sell them for about $6 or $7 a plant. That's where they come from, South Australia. Pretty interesting. So yes, you can. Go for it, Samantha. Aruni is in Ardros. That's in WA. I've got a beautiful standard rose bush yesterday as my Mother's Day present. Congratulations. That's great, Aruni. Good kids too, by the way. I want to put it in the ground. Is it okay to plant it now and next to native plants? Well, we've been talking about the fertilizer. We're talking about the Osmocote fertilizer that's designed for native plants. It doesn't have a lot of phosphorus in it. In fact, it has very little, if any. And yet roses do require it. So if you're going to stick them next to each other, and you've got something like a Banksia as a native plant, your Banksia, if you feed your rose with the right fertilizer, you'll kill your Banksia. So the real answer is keep them separate. If you've got a standard, maybe keep it in a pot. They really do love growing in pots, and the trick with them is to be feeding them. But you want a flower-promoting fertilizer, and there is an Osmocote that's for roses, gardenias, camellias, and azaleas that you want to keep your eye out for. But I wouldn't mix them up, Aruni. I'd keep them separated if I was you. Janine is in Camden in southwest Sydney. Hello. What would go well in some large garden beds under our big gum trees that would give a nice cottage feel to complement our heritage style home? Now, we only have a few Clivias at present. I was going to suggest to you Clivias. Clivias would do really well under big gums. That's kind of one of those difficult spots. because the root system of gum trees tends to stop, and also the oil-rich leaves tends to stop a lot of other plants growing or germinating in that environment. You could go for some native plants that would work under there, and tea trees are a good example of ones that will grow in that environment. But to be quite honest, cottage plants, I would be looking at mass plantings of Clivia. It's a great way to go. It's such a beautiful plant, and you can get a cream, a yellow, obviously the orange, and quite a red coloured flower as well. So you could get some nice splashes of different colour. Now's the time to be planting them out as well, by the way. Steve's in central Victoria. Hi, Steve. My apple tree is flowering again. Should I remove the flowers or will they drop themselves? Very unusual conditions when you're seeing apples flower out of season, but don't do anything. Just leave them. The tree will be fine by itself. Mother Nature does these things. It's just how she works. It won't produce fruit, but it will produce flowers again in the spring, and you'll get fruit next season. Nicole's in Maiponga in South Australia, great part of the world. I'm having problems with Harlequin bugs. Now, I've tried dishwashing soap and warm water. It didn't seem to do anything. They're destroying your small hedge. Please help. All right, this is a really important one. These guys can do a lot of damage, and what you want to do is you don't want to be spraying harsh chemicals around. You want to move them on, which is why that dishwashing soap and warm water thing has sort of gone around as a solution. It's not really going to do the job. What you want is white oil. So go and get some white oil. It could be eco oil or horticultural oil or white oil. There's a whole bunch of different brands, but get it and spray it over the hedge. Now, Harlequin bugs have hard shells for their bodies, and when the oil sticks to it, they hate it. So they get up and they'll fly away, and they'll go to other plants that they should be spending their time on, not your hedge. So hopefully that helps. Albert is in East Cannington. Hi, Albert. What's your tip for a successful cutting propagation? I've tried to propagate petunias, daisies, ivy cuttings, and a lot more with little success. Now, I've applied the common methods, taking cuttings 10 centimetres, leave 2 leaves cut in half, you've dipped them into propagation powder or gel, you've dampened the potting mix, you've loaded into the propagation tray and stuck the cuttings in there, put the tray in a small greenhouse. You put the greenhouse in a spot under the house eaves that's bright with no direct sunlight. Can I identify any mistake in your method? You're doing a lot of things that are right there, Albert. What is probably affecting your success rate is probably going to be consistency of moisture. So trying to keep that potting mix consistently moist, a propagation mix. Your propagation mix needs to be a proper cutting mix. So if you were to make it yourself, it would probably consist of something like coarse river sand, cocoa peat, fine grade cocoa peat, and you would probably have maybe just a little bit of bark or sawdust in there that's been composted down. What I'd suggest you do is when you do it, one little trick is for the first week, have a little coat hanger, a little bit of wire over the top that goes into the top of the pot. So do 2 of them, so it goes like that, and grab a plastic bag. So one of those little freezer bags is ideal. Pop that over the top of the pot with a lucky band around the base. Now, as long as it's been watered on the inside, this will keep moisture inside for a lot longer. And what you want is the first 2 weeks for these plants not to go backwards quickly, but to sort of basically set some roots, to callus the bottom of those cuttings and start the process of growing. After 2 weeks, you have to take the plastic bag off, because if you leave it on for too long, you'll end up with fungal diseases. So it's probably a little thing you want to try. Just out of interest, petunias pretty difficult to grow from cutting, but daisies, ivies, they should all be growing quite well. So try my solution. I think you're probably right on the edge. And just, Albert, one more thing is that if you can get yourself a heat pad, you can buy these and pop it on the bottom of the pot, so the pot sits on top. That warm soil on the base really encourages rapid root growth. So that's what the professionals use, and that's what gets really, really good cutting strike. So hopefully that helps. Okay, we'll stay in WA just for a second. Carol's in Jane Brook. Thanks very much. Welcome back, Trevor. Thank you. My son's got an olive tree. What do you feed them? Because the olives are not big. Well, Carol, it could be that the variety of olive you've got is actually an oil olive. Most of the oil olives are very small olives. So you might just want to have a bit of a quick think about the variety that you've got, because generally the fruit will always be the same size. It suggests to me that it's more a varietal issue than it is a fruit size due to fertilizer issue. So give that a try. See, so just have a look at it and just have a bit of a squeeze. Generally, as I said, the smaller ones are for oil, but you can pickle them. And the thing with them is if you crush the olive, that olive oil, you put it on your hands or on your skin, it is unbelievably good for skin health. Really terrific way to moisturize your skin naturally. Okay, have you been enjoying our 20th anniversary series of the Garden Gurus? Before we wrap up this week's show, I thought we'd give you a sneak peek of what's to come in episode 12.
Helleborus, also known as the winter rose, are cold hardy perennials that do really well planted beneath taller trees or shrubs, and they're famously known for their nodding flowers that come in all sorts of colours, and over time they'll gradually naturalise an area looking fantastic.
This lawn hasn't had a speck of fertiliser in 5 years, yet it's beautiful and green, and if it gets damaged, it recovers at lightning speed. If you were to sink a shovel into the grass, you'd come up with a square of black earth, loaded with earthworms.
Let me share a secret with you. The autumn is by far the best time of the year in my garden. In fact, I love it. I prefer it of all the seasons. Sure, spring is fantastic, but spring is about flowers. I'm not saying autumn doesn't have a flower. Look at the beautiful dahlias that are coming through and really do stand out this time of the year. Wow, what a day. Gone through a lot of questions, covered a lot of ground. I hope you've enjoyed this morning's show. It's been a great effort. Again, the team here do remarkable work. Robin and Sam have got us through, and we've had a couple of little technical problems, so thanks for your understanding with that as we've worked through those. But we got there. We got to answer a lot of your gardening questions. Now, the good news is that I'm actually going to be back in the chair next week, next Monday, and I'll see you for Garden Gurus Live, 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's 10 o'clock over here in the West. Robin will be sending a message out to our seed winners after today's show, and we will make sure that we roll any of the questions that we missed over into next week's show as well, so we do get them answered for you. Don't forget, you can always send photo submissions or a video through to us, but you've got to do it by Wednesday. It just gives us an assistance with the technical side of things. Make sure you tell us your name, your state and suburb, and of course outline the question. And if you've got any questions, you can always jump onto our website. It's a great resource. You can catch previous stories from the Garden Gurus at thegardengurus.tv, or you can go to our YouTube channel, thegardengurus.tv. And of course, you can listen back to today's live stream and catch up on previous episodes by visiting Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Audible. They all carry our podcast. And don't forget, of course, this Saturday on Channel 9 at 4:30 p.m, make sure you check out episode 12 of the Garden Gurus Autumn Season. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Trevor Cochran, and we'll look forward to seeing you again really soon. Happy gardening.